The night wind moved like a whisper through the olive branches, carrying a heaviness that no dawn could lift. Simon Peter watched Jesus from the shadows, his heart hammering with fear he could not name. Judas had been gone too long. The stars trembled above as though they, too, feared the coming hour. If forgiveness heals the soul, Peter thought, why does guilt feel so divine? Jesus knelt, eyes lifted to a sky that did not answer, lips moving with words the world would never fully understand. Somewhere between the rustle of leaves and the silence of prayer, Peter heard it, a voice not of this earth, calling him to choose between love and obedience. He stepped closer. Jesus turned, calm as still water, and said softly, Peter, before the light returns, one of us will break. The question burned inside him. What if prophecy could be undone? If only he dared to act. The night deepens. Peter moves closer to Jesus, unable to contain the fire rising in him. Master, he whispers, you speak of betrayal, but we will stand by you. I will fight. Jesus looks at him, eyes full of sadness that feels older than time. Fight. He repeats softly. Peter, the sword wounds more than flesh. A pause lingers, heavy, aching. Jesus touches Peter's shoulder, the gesture both blessing and farewell. In the distance, the faint sound of footsteps and the flicker of torchlight begin to grow. Judas returns to the edge of the grove, leading soldiers by torchlight. The air is thick with dread. Peter watches from behind a rock, his breath shallow. He sees the look in Judas's eyes, not hatred, but anguish. The world seems to hold its breath before shattering. Jesus rises slowly from prayer as Judas approaches. The disciples stir. Friend, Jesus says, voice calm, do what you have come to do. Peter's hand tightens on his blade. Mary's eyes fill with tears. Somewhere above, thunder murmurs without storm. The prophecy breathes. The soldiers move closer. Peter steps out from hiding, heart pounding. You will not take him, he cries, raising his blade. But Jesus turns toward him, eyes full of infinite sorrow. Put it away, he whispers. The wind stills. The angel passes unseen through the trees, whispering over the ground where destiny takes root. Somewhere far off, a rooster cries, though the dawn has not yet come. The night had not ended. It only changed its shape. Peter wandered through the grove, his thoughts tearing against one another. He found Mary Magdalene waiting near the well, her face pale in the cold light. He will be taken, Peter said, unless we act. Mary's eyes, dark as the earth itself, met his. He already knows, she whispered. But he does not resist. Peter clenched his fists. Then we must resist for him. In her silence, he heard compassion and warning mingled, like the soft edge of truth that hurts to touch. The wind rose, scattering dust across their feet, as if the very world tried to erase the words before they could live. They hid inside a ruined hut beyond the grove. Peter paced like a storm contained, every breath sharp. Mary watched him, her voice calm but steady. Do you believe he can die? She asked. Peter froze. He mustn't. She moved closer, her hand brushing the wooden beam. And yet, what if death is not defeat? He turned away, eyes blazing. You speak in riddles like him. Her lips curved faintly. Then listen as he would, not to escape, but to understand. Outside, the first colors of dawn spilled like blood over the hills. John approached, his steps hesitant. They have taken him to the priests, he said, voice breaking. Peter turned sharply, fear burning in his chest. There is still time. Mary rose, her eyes glinting with decision. Then we go. The three figures moved together through the awakening light, each carrying a fragment of faith too heavy for one heart alone. They reached the edge of the city. Soldiers marched beyond the gates. The temple loomed like a mountain of stone and silence. Peter felt the world shrinking around him. If I can reach him, I can free him, he said. Mary stepped forward, placing her hand upon his arm. To save him, you may lose yourself. Peter's eyes softened but did not falter. Then let me be lost. She looked away, whispering, even love can become a weapon when it forgets who it serves. In the shadow of the city gate, Peter hid among the market stalls. Through the noise he heard the murmur of voices, priests debating, soldiers gathering, and somewhere beyond, the faint echo of Jesus' calm reply. He wanted to run to him, to break every chain by force, but something deeper held him still. Mary's words haunted him. What if death is not defeat? He closed his eyes, and for a brief, eternal moment, he heard a whisper. Not from Mary, not from memory, but from within his own soul. When love tries to save, it must first learn to surrender. The air thickened with torch smoke and fear. The disciples gathered in the grove again, their faces pale against the rising heat of betrayal. Peter could hear the soldiers coming long before he saw them, boots crushing the dry leaves like bones. "It's him," John whispered, voice trembling. Judas led the way, torch in hand, face lit by gold and guilt. Jesus stood still. There was no surprise in him, only a quiet that silenced the world. Peter's heart thrashed like a trapped bird. He wanted to speak, to stop what had been foretold, but Jesus' gaze held him still, gentle, unyielding, infinite. Judas stopped before Jesus, his torch trembling in his grasp. "Rabbi," he said, voice breaking beneath the word. The kiss came swift, a touch that broke the line between love and betrayal. Jesus did not step back. He looked into Judas' eyes as though forgiving him before the sin had even lived. Peter leapt forward, heart roaring, but Jesus raised his hand. "Let it be," he said softly. The cup must be taken. The soldiers moved in, but their confidence faltered against his calm. Somewhere in the dark, thunder stirred. The soldiers reached for Jesus, but Peter's rage exploded. With a cry that split the night, he drew his blade and struck. The flash of steel caught a soldier's ear, and blood spilled onto the dirt. Silence fell. A silence so deep it seemed the earth itself paused. Jesus turned toward the wounded man. "No more of this," he said. Kneeling, he touched the soldier's head, and flesh became whole again. Even the torches seemed to bow. Peter's hands trembled, shame burning where anger had been. "You came to save," Jesus said gently, "but you do not yet know what saving means." The disciples scattered. The soldiers bound Jesus with rough rope, but he offered his wrists without resistance. Peter fell to his knees. "Lord, forgive me," he whispered. Jesus looked down at him, and in that gaze Peter saw both sorrow and eternal peace. "The path was written, Peter," Jesus said softly, "but love will rewrite the ending." Peter wanted to speak, to beg, to fight again, but his voice was gone. The torches turned away, and the grove fell into shadow. As dawn crept toward the horizon, Peter hid among the olive trunks, the air still heavy with the scent of torches and iron. He watched them lead Jesus away, his robe brushing the ground, his silence deeper than any cry. Mary Magdalene appeared from the shadows, her eyes red, her steps slow. "It is done," she said, her voice hollow. Peter could not answer. He only stared at the fading line of soldiers until Jesus was gone from sight. Then he whispered to the empty sky, "What is the use of love if it cannot save?" The wind answered softly, carrying his last words back to him. "It saves, Peter, but not as you dream." The city slept under a bruised sky. Peter wandered through the narrow alleys, torchlight flickering off stone walls, slick with dew. He moved like a shadow among shadows, searching for what his heart could not release. From a distance he saw them, the guards leading Jesus through a quiet courtyard before sunrise. For a moment, their eyes met. Jesus' gaze held no accusation, only recognition. A soldier's shout broke the spell. Peter followed, silent and unseen, heart pounding with the ache of everything he could not undo. In that instant, prophecy felt like a cage, and love, the desperate fluttering within it. When the guards paused at the edge of the courtyard, Peter crept closer. His breath trembled. "Master," he whispered through the bars of the gate. Jesus turned slightly, as though he had expected him all along. "Peter," he said softly, "you have not failed. You have only not understood." Peter pressed his hands to the iron, tears falling. "Why must you let them take you?" Jesus looked upward. "Because love that fears pain is not yet love at all." A silence followed, sacred and unbearable. The guards moved away for a moment. Peter dared to step inside, his hands shaking as he approached. "Let me take you away," he pleaded, voice breaking. Jesus smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes from knowing something deeper than fear. "Peter, do you remember the sea?" He nodded, tears streaming down. "Then you know, love is not safety. It is surrender." Peter fell to his knees, trembling. "Then teach me to love," he whispered. Jesus reached out, his bound hands brushing Peter's shoulder, a touch lighter than air, stronger than time. They spoke quietly, like two men at the edge of eternity. "When I am gone," Jesus said, "you will deny me, and in your denial, you will find the truth of your heart." Peter shook his head violently. "Never." Jesus smiled with sadness. "Even faith must break before it can be made whole." The first rays of dawn spilled over the stones. Somewhere beyond the walls, a rooster stirred. "When the dawn cries out," Jesus whispered, "remember this. I did not come to be saved, Peter. I came to save you." The guards returned. Jesus straightened, the calm of eternity in his eyes. Peter backed into the shadows, his heart breaking beneath the weight of love and helplessness. "Go," Jesus said gently. "The world will need your tears more than your sword." The soldiers led him away toward the high priest's hall. Peter remained frozen in the fading light, hearing the whisper of his words linger in the wind. A truth too vast for his mind, too merciful for his soul. For a moment, the world seemed still, waiting for heaven to breathe again. The courtyard of the high priest was alive with whispers and firelight. Peter slipped among the servants, his cloak drawn tight around his weathered face. Every shout from inside made him flinch. Jesus was being questioned, mocked, judged. His heart pounded like a drum in a tomb. A servant girl stared at him through the smoke. "You were with him," she said. "You were with him," she said. Peter's mouth opened, but no sound came. He forced a bitter laugh. "You mistake me for another." The lie cut deeper than any blade he had ever drawn. Minutes passed. Another voice rose behind him, a man's, firm and accusing. "You are one of his followers." Peter's chest tightened. "I do not know the man." The words struck him like thunder within. His hands trembled as if they belonged to someone else. From inside, faintly, he heard Jesus speak, calm, resolute. The sound was both comfort and torment. Mary Magdalene appeared in the distance, hidden among the shadows, tears glimmering in her eyes as she watched Peter's soul fracture in silence. Then came the final voice, a woman's, trembling but certain. "Your accent betrays you. You are Galilean." The courtyard hushed. Peter turned toward her, his face pale as ash. "I swear I do not know him," he cried. The air seemed to crack. And then the sound. A rooster crowed, sharp and clear, slicing the night apart. The fire dimmed. From across the courtyard, Jesus turned his head. Their eyes met. In that glance lived every mercy the world had forgotten. Peter's knees gave way. He fled into the dawn, his heart bleeding in silence. Peter stumbled through the streets as the world awoke. The sun rose, cold and merciless, painting the city in gold that felt like judgment. He fell beside a fountain, burying his face in his hands. Every sound, the wind, the footsteps, the birds, spoke his name. "Why did I live to betray you?" he whispered. But the whisper turned into a sob, then a scream that no one answered. In that emptiness, a voice stirred, not from heaven, but from the wound inside him. Love does not fail because it fears. It fails only when it refuses to rise again. He wandered until the sun rose high, then hid among the olive trees once more. The same grove that had seen his promise now witnessed his undoing. He fell to his knees where Jesus had prayed, clutching the soil as if it could forgive him. "You told me I would deny you," he whispered. "And I did. Yet you looked at me as though I still mattered." The wind sighed through the branches, gentle and endless. Peter lifted his face toward the sky, eyes raw, voice trembling. "Then teach me how to love again." Jerusalem slept beneath a gray veil. The city that had screamed now whispered in guilt. Peter walked its deserted streets like a ghost wearing skin, unable to speak the name that haunted him. Every stone seemed to echo the sound of the hammer. He paused near a wall where shadows pooled and silence pressed against his chest. If forgiveness was real, he thought, why did the world still feel cursed? He sank to the ground, the memory of Jesus' eyes burning through him, eyes that had loved him even in the moment of denial. Mary Magdalene walked through the alleys, her crimson shawl trailing like a wounded banner. She found Peter, sitting alone, his eyes hollow. "He is gone," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But he said the third day." Her words faltered. Peter looked up, his voice dry as sand. "He said many things I did not understand." She knelt beside him. "Then perhaps now is the time to remember." Her hand rested over his, and in that human touch, something fragile flickered. Not faith, not yet, but the faint stirring of hope's shadow. That afternoon, Peter wandered alone into the desert beyond the walls. The earth was endless and silent, the sky bruised and wide. He fell to his knees upon the sand. "You told me love would cost everything," he whispered. "And it has." The wind swept over him like a living thing. In its sound, he heard a voice, soft, like memory itself. "Nothing is lost that is given in love." He closed his eyes, tears falling freely. The silence did not answer, but somehow it listened. Night returned. The disciples hid together in a small stone room, candles flickering like frightened souls. No one spoke of hope aloud. John's young face was tear-streaked, his voice barely a whisper. If he was the Son of God, why did he not stop it? Peter looked into the flame, because love does not stop pain. It walks through it. The words surprised him. They did not erase his grief, but they steadied it, as if some hidden truth had finally reached his trembling heart. As dawn neared, Peter stepped outside. The sky was not yet light, but something had changed in the air, a pulse, a presence. He knelt once more, whispering the only prayer left in him. "If you are still near, teach me to wait." The wind stirred the olive branches. Somewhere far beyond the horizon, the first light of resurrection began to rise, unseen, unstoppable. Peter closed his eyes, letting the quiet settle into his bones. In that silence, love began to live again. Morning broke soft and endless over the Sea of Galilee. Peter returned to the only work he understood, casting nets into the quiet water, trying to forget. His hands, hardened by guilt, moved without hope. The others fished beside him, their silence deeper than the waves. Then a voice carried across the mist. "Children, have you any fish?" Peter froze. The sound was both strange and achingly familiar. He turned toward the shore and saw a lone figure standing in the light, fire burning beside him. Something in his soul recognized before his eyes could. The world tilted. He leapt from the boat and began to swim. Peter stumbled onto the sand, breathless, dripping, shaking. The fire crackled with the scent of bread and fish. Jesus smiled, calm and alive. "Come and eat," he said. Peter dropped to his knees. How can you be here?" Jesus only looked at him. The same eyes that once met his across a courtyard of denial. "Do you love me?" The words pierced him. "You know that I do." Jesus nodded. "Then feed my sheep." The silence between them became sacred. A bridge rebuilt not by explanation but by grace. They ate in silence while the waves whispered against the shore. After a while, Jesus rose and walked a few steps toward the water. Peter followed. "When I denied you," he began, voice breaking, "you looked at me and still loved me. Why?" Jesus turned, the light of morning crowning his hair. "Because love does not remember failure, only return." Peter bowed his head. The tide touched his feet, cool and cleansing as if creation itself was forgiving him. Later, as the sun climbed, Mary Magdalene approached from the rocks above. She carried quiet joy on her face, the joy of one who has seen death undone. Peter turned toward her, the shame that once chained him dissolving beneath the sound of her steps. She smiled. "He told me you would understand now." Peter nodded slowly. "I do, not with my mind, but with my heart." Jesus watched them both, the wind weaving their shadows together across the sand. As day faded, Jesus walked a little distance down the beach. Peter followed until they stood alone where water met the world. "One day," Jesus said gently, "you will stretch out your hands, and another will lead you where you do not wish to go." Peter nodded, no longer afraid. "As long as you are there." Jesus smiled, a smile that carried eternity. Then he turned toward the light and walked on. The waves erased his footprints, but not his presence. Peter watched the horizon blaze into gold and whispered, "Now I know. Love does not save us from suffering. It saves us through it."